Hello there. Well, I've had quite a few questions and inquiries about how I make my loading ramps. So, what I make them out of and how they're used. So, I'm going to take a stab at it and see if I can show you how I make these loading ramps. They're real simple, but I wanted something that was real lightweight that I could carry with me, and also wanted something that was sturdy enough to hold my engines. My engines are like almost 500 pounds a piece, so wanted something sturdy to hold that weight unloading and at the same time be available so I could just carry them with me. So I'm going to take a stab at it, see what happens. Okay, here in the trailer, I also use as a camper. You can see my beds on the side there. After the engines and cars all come out, then I can fold my mattresses down and use it for a camper bed. Anyway, this is where I store my unloading ramp. I have two homemade screws here I can attach to them and screw down, tighten them up, then my ramp comes right out. To put these mounts in, I have a threaded insert I got from a hardware store. It's nothing nothing exotic, but you can see how they just come down and attach to the wood. Anyway, that's how I start off unloading, and I have my ramp made to fit my trailer. I have a hole I drilled and I reinforced it with a piece of aluminum, and if you look underneath, like up here, I have you can see I have a reinforced hole there. So this is it's a long threaded nut drilled out 3/8 plus a little, so that I can put a pin in it. Like right here, to hold that while keep it from moving back and forth. This is how it's made. It's where the pin goes down through the top. I drill that out, and then this goes underneath up against the bottom, and then the piece of aluminum comes across the top, and two screws go down through it, hold it in place. This end fits flat. This end fits down between the rails with a slight curve on it, so that when the wheels roll down, it goes immediately onto the track. So that gives you a good entrance. As you can see, it's got a little curve to it. Okay, well, I pick this up and put it back in the trailer. I have a couple of holes I have a welded washer, 2 places on my ramp. I have another washer welded down here. I can line up over that threaded portion. Screw it down. Screw this one down. That way you know where they're going to be whenever you get to wherever you're going. Loading ramp will be right there. Okay, to make this ramp, I gave me a couple pieces, or a piece of 1-inch channel by 1/8 with a 1/2 inch top and bottom on it channel. I have to order this from a local steel supply place because they don't carry it in stock, and comes out of Canada. So this is where I start. I cut me piece, 2 pieces, same length, so they're good and straight. This end, mark this back 4 inches here. So this is going to be for the trailer side. This is where this is going to be here. So what I'll do here is turn this over on the side, and I'm going to cut this out with both of them locked together. I'm going to take a grinder with a 45 thousandths blade in it, one of those thin blades, and cut me a slot right here all the way through back to 4 inches. So it'll just be one slot right underneath this lip here all the way back. At this end, which is going to be the end that goes down in between the track, it's going to have 2 cuts in it. The cut for this piece is going to be at the bottom, and there'll be a cut at the top. You can see right here a cut at the top. So looking at this, I'm going to cut it back 5 inches, which is right here. So it's going to get cut at the bottom all the way out. And it's going to be cut down through both pieces. And then I'm going to cut back about 3 inches at the top. I'm going to cut this out here like this. And then from here, I'm going to cut down this way and end up at the same place I cut this piece. So I'm going to cut a diagonal out here. So this will be a wedge that will be removed here. And you'll be left with this wedge sticking out like this. So let me put a ruler on that. Give you an estimate of how far back there I've cut. See, I was guessing at 3 inches. So I got 3 inches. So that's the way we're going to start cutting it. So I'll cut this end, and I'll cut this end, and then I'll have a piece ready to start installing my plates. Okay, now let's see what we've got here. I cut out this slot, goes all the way through, with both of them clamped together so that they'll both be the same. On this end, I cut out the slot as well as the V notch, and this part gets bent down and welded to this part, as you can see over here. We'll get to that later. Okay, the next thing is we're going to put the piece of metal in these slots on each of these channels, the runners, and I take my grinder, my 16 45 thousandths blade, and I go through this a couple of times on both sides and clean them out real good so that the metal will slide in, and that's what we're going to do next. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is install this piece of metal in the end, and before we do that, we're going to clamp the back end and put the gauge on it so that we got, I'm using 7.5 inches here, so whatever you're going to use is a gauge. This has got to be at the back, this has got to be engaged before you weld the front. Here, if you weld this before that's engaged, then you got a real mess. So this has to be perfect here in order for this to fit in there. So as you can see, the slots on the side are made so that you put the piece of metal in and it slides in the slot. And it needs to be pretty close in there like that. See how this is close in here? So you get it square, and it needs to be the same here and the same here. This part is going to get trimmed off, so it don't really make much difference here. So this end here will get, part of this will get trimmed off this way, and then your holes will go here for the attachment points. So we'll get to that later, but right now what we have to do now is weld these ends in place, and I weld on the outside only on both sides, no weld on the inside, because this is where your wheels are going to be, flange is going to be running along the edge of this. So no weld on the inside or on either side, just a weld on the outside here and weld on the outside here. So that's the next thing. Okay, now we've or I have tacked this piece of metal in place under here, and I'll weld that totally off from one end to the other there. Welded this side here and here, and I'll weld this totally from one side to the other. Okay, now the next thing we'll do is turn this thing around and we'll install our piece of metal at this end. Okay, now we've turned this thing around and we're working on the end that goes to your unloading area, your unloading table or unloading track, whichever you're going to do. So I just, in the slots that I cut in this channel on both sides here, I just slid the plate up in those slots here all the way up to here. As you can see, it's slid in to the inside. Be sure you put your gauge on it. And now we're going to tack these in place on both sides. Now we have it pretty well centered, And what we're going to do now is go in here and weld on the inside of this and on the inside of this. There'll be no weld on the outside, in between here. No weld in here, because this is where your car flanges are going to run. So you don't need anything in here. Outside is the most strong point anyway. So this is what we're going to do now, is finish this up. Okay, now we've turned the whole thing on its side so we can get to these places in here to weld this up. This end and this end. We've got a place now where we can weld straight in and get a good weld on the plates. I recommend don't weld too much at one time. It'll draw the metal. So weld about an inch on one side and weld an inch on the other end and let it cool a little bit before you weld. Okay, now that we've got our end welded up, this end's welded up, we're going to turn it over and start working on these ends to adapt them to the track, so that whenever you lay this up on the bed of the pickup or your bed of your trailer or whatever you're hauling your engine in, so this will fit onto the track as well as onto your pickup or trailer. Okay, now that this thing is cooled off enough, we can work on it some. I've labeled this, of course, upside down. So this is the trailer side. And what we'll do is get some measurements here. As you can see, it's just a little wider than my track here. I use 1/4 inch by 1 inch aluminum. I got this stuff from Lowe's. It cost a fortune. I put some countersink screws into it, under the wood. But as you can see here, what we have to do is trim off a little bit on each side so that it fits between the rails. It's got to go down between the rails, and this has got to be cut off to here, like that. And what I do is I try to cut off a little of this end here so that in case you need to move it from side to side, they don't bind up so bad. So I try to taper these sides, and then of course I'll have to put some holes in the center. The holes will be down this way, so that when you drop it in here or up to here, it will be close enough to your track so that you don't jump off too much here. So you'll have to gauge your holes here by usually put a square or something here to come out here to find your hole. Drop back a little further, come out here and find you another location. So that way it gives you a good approximation of where you put your holes. And even if you got a little gap here, those wheels are going to jump a gap a little bit here and there. Okay, so the trailer end is the end we're going to be working on now. And as you can see over here, this end is wider. So this is going to have to be cut off this way and trim it off square. And on this end I usually put a couple of holes, or a hole on this end in case I need to use it for something else, to attach it to another ramp. And of course this end has to have this end here has to have a taper to it, so that goes down inside. Also at this end In order to keep your trailer here from coming into contact with something that bucks it up too high, depending on what kind of trailer you have, I cut off a piece of this. I cut down through here and cut off a piece of this so that it doesn't interfere with anything that's on the trailer. So I'll show you how I do that. Okay, you see here I've trimmed the sides and smoothed up the edges a little bit. This is the one that goes on the trailer side. Cut these, tapered it so that the track, so that this can vary just a little bit from side to side and still go up between the track. So let's go out here and try it. Okay, this is the track side here. So we'll give this a try on my work stand. Let's see, that fits down between there. And see the taper here so that we can get to the wheels. Get the wheels up on the track. And this has to be bent down about 15 degrees so that when you're laying it like this, when you have a shorter angle here, that it doesn't slip off the side. So what I have is I have a precision instrument that I bend this with, and let me go over here to it so that I can get my exact measurements. And I put it right here in my precision instrument, and I just walk this around about 15 degrees, and that gives me a good measurement right there. So now when I put it down between the tracks, or down between the unloading ramp, see, it goes down between it. So that way you have a good angle. Also, this is the one that goes to the trailer. And this fits up in here. See how it comes up in there? And of course on mine here I need to trim that off so I won't have a big gap here. But that's plenty right there. So now I got to find my holes in here by putting a square across here and marking my holes. So that's what I'll do next. Okay, let's see if I can find those holes. Get the center of that hole. I'm gonna mark it like that. I'm gonna pull it back about an inch, and I'm gonna put another hole there. I could put another hole up here, because sometimes if I have to use this for an unloading ramp coming from the top up here down, I have to put a stand here. So sometimes that is good for a hole there. So that's where I'm going to drill my holes. Now I have this little square that's 6 inches by 4 inches. So when I put this here on the 7.5 across here, I draw me a line across here using the 4-inch, and then I flip it over and I draw me a line all the way across here, And that tells me where my holes are going to go. Also down here, I want to have some holes down here. In case I need to anchor this end. So that's how I would find the center of where my hole's gonna go. Okay, we've got this end mostly done. I drilled my holes, tapered this and smoothed it up. I cut out just a little taper on this side, on the back side here, to prevent this from contacting the trailer or anytime you use it on a trailer. You stand a chance, or a pickup bed or whatever, you stand a chance of coming in contact with it and raising this up. So I always like to cut these off just a little bit here. Okay, this end I've got my holes drilled, smooth it up, ground this down. You don't want a sharp edge on these, so you ground those off so that they're not sharp and need to be tapered a little bit for the wheels to roll up on. I cut and tapered this end here so that it comes down. I ground this off a little bit so you have a place for this to sit on your unloading ramp. This much of it will sit on the unloading ramp, as well as when it comes in on a tapered edge when it comes to loading and unloading. So this will get it a little closer right here. Next thing we need to do is, if you're going to pick this thing up, I like to have a handle in the middle. Also, I need a brace to keep it from spreading. If it spreads, it could stand a chance of derailing. So what I like to do is I find a piece of just scrap metal and I pick it up until I find the center, and that makes it easy to carry if it's centered right there. So then I mark that, and then I have a scrap piece of channel that I'm going to weld right in here. I'll put my gauge on it. And then I'll weld a piece right here in the center. So that's the next part. Okay, I've got everything done that needs to be done except for the paint. I have both ends are finished. My handle is put on, and you can see I got it pretty well level, so you can pick it up and not have to fight it. So let's go try it out here on the trailer. Put it down here so we can put our anchor pin in place. Fits on the ramp. See, it rolls right up on there. No problem. Comes over here and rolls right on with no problem. I make these anchor pins out of 3/8" bolt. Just grind the head down so that they're tapered. Taper the ends so that they'll make a pin. Okay, I've got one more thing I want to show you. In relation to these ramps. I have made these legs that I use whenever I'm unloading. If I'm unloading to the ground, if I'm unloading from the top of the trailer to the ground or to a ramp, most of the time I'll have to have one of these legs. Most of the time it's this long leg if it's just from the top of the top deck down to the trailer, down to the ramp. Now I've made a video on how I load and unload my train, so that might help. But this is just a it's a piece of 1-inch square tubing. I welded it together here on an angle, and I can adjust the height of it by pulling these little pins and slide this out. I drilled all these holes so that you could adjust the height of it. And these little pins have a little locking feature at the end of it called pit pins, so that way they don't come out. You get these at McMaster Car. They cost a fortune. So I can adjust this by coming out of the trailer on the height, and whenever you come out, it fits on here, and I put a anchor pin through here, and then the next piece of loading ramp fits on top of this, and the angle and the post, that angle post goes through here. It goes through all three of them, and that way they're locked in place. So that way you can come out of the top or out of the bottom, go all the way to the ground, and I'll have enough of these ramps made to do that, and you're welcome to go look at my little video. Okay, the last thing we'll do to it before we paint it is I welded on me a couple of washers here to attach to the trailer so that it don't slide around. Okay, this is the ramp all finished. Painted, ready to go. Well, that's about it for a loading ramp, and I hope I didn't bore you to death with all the stopping and starting and all the procedures here I did. I enjoyed making the video, and I hope somebody can get some use out of it. If not, just get some good ideas, or maybe a good amusement out of it. So have a good day, and thank you for watching.